Liberty Nation. Truth is making a comeback.
Well, high drama. On Tuesday evening in our nation's capital, President Trump delivers his first Oval Office address to the nation in his almost two-year-old presidency, laying out what he called a crisis of the heart and a crisis of the soul, a cycle of human suffering at our southern border. Democrats Pelosi and Schumer, Chuck and Nancy come back with a stinging response. And joining us to evaluate these nationally televised speeches are LibertyNation.com political correspondent Graham Noble and national correspondent Sarah Cowgill and Joe Schaefer. And Joe, let's start with you. How do you rate President Trump's address?
Well, I thought he did a good job. The only question I would have is it was a fantastic campaign speech, but that's all it came across to me as. He was giving his standard campaign speech using what should have been a very powerful bully pulpit doing a presidential address to the nation. So I was expecting more. I wasn't expecting the national emergency declaration, which would have been ideal. And some people are saying this was a necessary step for him to take, the four-dimensional chess argument. And he's going to go through all the facets and then have no choice but declare the national emergency. If so, I still don't understand this point. Why give a routine campaign speech? I wish he would have been much more, I don't want to use the word belligerent, but more saying, Congress is not letting me do what you elected me to do, and I wish he had given a call to arms to the army of deplorables and said, have my back on this, fight with me on this. And so I was expecting a little more fire than we got last night.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He made the point that Democrats have voted for physical barriers on the southern border repeatedly over the years, but not since he became president, of course. Graham, you wrote about what you called the Democrats' petulant response to the president. Take it from there.
Yeah, well, I think their response is exactly what any of us would have expected from them. I mean, it was part bash Trump. It was part crisis, what crisis? And it was oh, how terrible it is that the government is shut down. Of course, it's only actually a partial shutdown, but nevertheless, that's everyone is they're selling it as a government shutdown. But that seemed to be their main theme, particularly from Nancy Pelosi. And it struck me that is because in the minds of Democrats and pretty much everybody on the left, that is all that matters, whether or not government is functioning. That is their prime concern. The government to them is the most important thing in the country, and there could be nothing worse. I mean, forget drug smuggling and human trafficking and women from Central America being raped on their way to the US border because they've been, promised an easy ride, an easy life when they get over the border by unscrupulous people. Forget all of that. The most important thing is that, the federal government is not functioning at full capacity. And so, I think the whole thing was silly. And we all know that the $5.7 billion in terms of relative to all other federal spending is such a paltry figure that's why I described it as petulant. What they're doing is because they're holding up this amount of money simply, as everybody knows, simply because they do not want to give the president a victory on border security.
Well, Sarah, you're joining us from the heart of Trump country, the heartland, flyover country, as the people in Washington call it. So out there, are your fellow Heartlanders freaking out about the government shutdown? Are they in a state of panic that 25% of the federal government is not functioning right now?
No, I think they're relieved because they know better, that we don't need those extra 25%. most of the people that I have been in contact with, my little sources all over the heartland, all over the Midwest, are a little bit disappointed in last night's speech, and honestly, I am too, because I like Joe, I kind of wanted to rally and cry. I wanted to hear him do something, but I don't blame the Democrats for the government shutdown. What I blame is the Republicans who had 2 years to do something, and they did nothing but fight their own president. So you can hand that back to Paul Ryan and the John McCains of the world and everybody else who just couldn't stand up and get it done. Could have been done, could have been over with. We could have been fighting about something else by now, but we're still fighting over $5 billion. We've scaled it back from $25 billion, and we still can't get it done. And now that falls to the Democrats. It's a minuscule amount of money in comparison to everything else that our federal budget is funding. And so I think he needs to just stay tough. And the people of the heartland, I think, want to see him be a little more belligerent. They want to bully. They don't want, this weak Trump to cave. They want him to go, screw you, to the Democrats and get the job done.
Well, this is speaking from the Oval Office without a crazy crowd, which is Trump's most preferred venue. He seemed to be a little uncomfortable at first, got better as it went along. But Joe, President Trump is the first, forget just president, the first politician we've seen in our lifetimes who's willing to fall on the sword for the issue of immigration. The question is whether there are enough Republicans with enough backbone to stick with this position that there must be at least $5.7 billion in funding for a border wall for the president to agree with them to end this shutdown. Are there enough Republicans who are willing to stick with Trump through what looks like, given the intractable positions of both Trump and the Democrats, a very long shutdown?
Well, that's what we're going to find out. And in that way, it's great because this is what the Republican establishment does not want. They do not want to be put in the spotlight and say, hey, do you people really have the principles that the voters elected you to have? Because we know they don't. I agree with everything Sarah said, that this is so on the Republicans. And it really feels like a tag team effort with Paul Ryan handing the baton to Nancy Pelosi. And it's sort of like, well, we did our job. We thwarted him for 2 years. Now the Democrats have the House. And it's the perfect excuse for them to do nothing, to continue doing nothing. They don't want this wall. The Democrats, we know, don't want this wall. But the Republicans are going to really be outed here. If they cave, there's going to be so much anger.
Oh, there's going to be anarchy across the Midwest. I can guarantee you that. I mean, people that are so pro-Trump and that I've quoted several times as go-to people in some of my articles, they're so pro-Trump. And if he caves on this wall, I mean, they're ready to kick him to the curb. I mean, this is a big deal for people in the middle of the country. We want immigration reform. Everybody does.
So what are they going to do with the congressional Republicans if they cave?
Oh, well, you just can't get rid of them. They're like cockroaches. You step on them, they go underground, they come back out.
Graham, I'm trying to get a word in edgewise, get a question to you.
Sorry.
But everybody has a lot to say this morning as well. They should. It seems, Graham, though, that the Democrats believe that they won the argument because they won the House in the midterm elections. And if they simply deny Trump his physical barrier, as he called it in the speech, that will be enough to defeat him for re-election, not taking into account the seeming clown car of potential Democratic presidential nominees, none of whom have distinguished themselves as of yet. But is their calculation, you think, correct? Not so much whether Trump caves on a border wall, but whether he actually gets it done. If he doesn't get it done, does that mean he's not going to get reelected?
Well, I would say no. That shouldn't mean that at all. Providing he gets the messaging right on this, and the messaging has to be quite simply, you didn't get the wall I promised you because the Democrats took over the House and simply wouldn't give me the money to do it. And he can even, it doesn't harm him to even repeat what the point that Sarah made is go back and say, look, even those rhino Republicans who were in control of the House before the Democrats, they didn't give me the money either. So I think if he gets the messaging right, he can go into 2020 without a wall and still easily get re-elected. I really think the wall is not going to make or break his re-election chances. And I think he has to also point out to the American people that, look what Chuck and Nancy did last night in their little speech. I take you back to the last time Trump tried to negotiate with the Democrats on the wall, and he offered a very generous solution for the dreamers, for the recipients of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. He offered them a very generous compromise, something that many conservatives would even go so far as describing as practical amnesty in return for border wall funding. And what did the Democrats say at that point? They said, no, that's not the right approach. We need a clean DACA bill. What they wanted is they wanted to be given everything they wanted for the so-called dreamers, and then pretend, well, once you give us what we want, we'll then talk about what you want. And of course they never do that, because the Democrats never do. And they did the same thing last night. Chuck and Nancy said, we need a clean bill to reopen the government, and then we can talk about border security. But of course, they have no intention of doing that. They just want the government back open, and then they'll just turn around and say, no, we're not giving you anything for border security. So basically, coming back to your original point, Tim, I think it really comes down to messaging. But I think that the president could easily go into 2020 and say, look, I did pretty much everything else I promised, but I couldn't give you a wall because the Democrats stopped me. I can't just sign an executive order and have a border wall built. Sorry, if I could, I would, but no. So I think it's not going to kill his presidency not having a wall.
Well, Sarah, you and Joe have both said, and I agree with it to a great degree, that last night might have been something of a real missed opportunity for President Trump. You don't get an Oval Office address to the nation very often. The last time was after we captured Osama bin Laden, and that was years ago during the Obama presidency. Do you fear that we're going to look back on this as a missed opportunity that could have been turned into something that might have put enough pressure on the Democrats to make them cave, at least to the point of a compromise bill? Or do you think that no matter what Trump would have said last night, no matter how much he might have nailed his first Oval Office address, that the Democrats weren't going to do anything anyway?
As speeches go, I thought it was a poor speech. It's not, he's as Joe said, he's a really good guy in front of thousands of people, but he feeds off of that. Last night was cameras, and it really fell flat with me, and it wasn't anything. There was nothing about it that I haven't heard already. There was nothing about the rebuttals that I haven't heard already. So honestly, I think people are kind of ticked off that maybe their programs were interrupted last night for an Oval Office address. I don't think he could have said anything. I think it was his only way of getting into the homes of all of the people, regardless of Democrat or Republican, to spread his message. I don't even think he should have done it, honestly. Missed opportunity or not, it was nothing new. It was nothing groundbreaking. It was poorly delivered. It was obviously poorly received by the Democrats, but he can breathe funny and they're gonna say he's spewing hate and evil. I just think that maybe we should have used that, or he should have used that opportunity at another time.
So it seems we all agree that nothing that the president said or that the Democrats said last night has changed the look on the ground of this shutdown or settling the immigration issue. So it's fair to say they're digging in for a long haul on the shutdown. Both sides have not given any ground, and neither side feels that they can give any ground because their base, Trump's base, doesn't want them to give an inch on a border wall, and the Democrats don't want to give Trump a dollar to build his border wall. And so maybe the net result of Tuesday night's back and forth between Trump and the Democrats was about a zero. We shall see. Maybe it was a draw, as it was before that. But we thank national correspondent Sarah Cowgill and Joe Schaefer and political correspondent Graham Noble on this Liberty Nation TV roundtable. Don't forget to subscribe to the LibertyNation.com YouTube channel where you can get this roundtable and a whole lot more. Thanks for joining us.